Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm a New York City-based small business growth coach, and I often work with organizations to focus on their people development strategies, creating employee engagement throughout their organization, but also as a part of that, creating amazing workplace cultures. And I want to talk to you today about something that is critically important to accomplishing both employee-first strategies and an amazing workplace culture. And that's the focus on employees' want, need, desires. The way that you do this more than anything else, is to rethink your organization from, unfortunately, a subject, a topic that's been really being attacked lately in American politics and discourse, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let me, for purposes of this video today, reframe the narrative around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So now the problem, or really the challenge that I face when I'm brought into organizations and coach them how to transform through these challenging times, is the mindset that diversity, equity, inclusion is some ethnicity-based metric hiring, meaning X% of your workforce needs to be this ethnicity, or that ethnicity. Nothing could be further from the truth. When we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, what we're talking about is a myriad of considerations. We start with the first consideration, diversity. What is diversity? It is not simply diversity in terms of generation. We're not talking about matures born before World War II all the way through alphas born after 2010. That's not what we're talking about. Sure, diversity requires having a workforce that has generational diversity so that your employees represent rather, the consumer market or the B2B environment you sell to. So that's a starting point. Generation. The next is, for sure, ethnicity, but also background, experiences, culture, upbringing, language proficiency, values, lifestyle, education, certifications, training. So that's the next layer of diversity. So we have surface level diversity, which is what we view with our eyes, gender, ethnicity, age. That's the first. We call it surface level. The deeper, more meaningful diversity is a deeper dive below the surface. And that's what is being missed in most discourse around DE&I initiatives. We're being attacked by the right wing of American politics. So that's diversity. What is equity? Equity is an employee's ownership. Actual ownership, like an ESOP, employee stock ownership participation plan. We'll get to that. So the ESOP is one consideration of equity, but equity is also a deeper, yet again, just like diversity, there's a surface level equity, which is ownership. It's the obvious, but a deeper level, a more complicated consideration of equity when it comes to your employees is, do they feel that they have ownership? Do they feel that their voice matters? Do they feel that you're soliciting their ideas, funding their ideas, implementing their ideas? Because listen to me when I say this, your employees are closest to the work. They know how to get the work done, right? So that's that. That's equity. Inclusion is being a part of something. Do I feel like I'm a part of this organization? Now, the cop-out, the lazy BS answer that I get far too often from startups, founders, entrepreneurs, or even executives in established organizations when it comes to including your people is, well, it's very difficult to get everybody's voice when people are working hybrid, they're working remote. That's BS, and we both know it. Diversity and equity, okay, we talked about surface level and deeper dive. Inclusion is, do your people feel a part of your organization? How do you build that out? Employee resource groups, so ERGs, where employees facilitate, manage, implement groups that get together on a shared interest, hobbies, background, certifications, education, experience. So they're forming their own groups, employee resource groups, but also you setting aside on an annual basis as part of your operating budget, a discretionary budget allocated for an idea generation program, where you have cross functions and the three layers, the senior executives, middle management, and frontline staff, who you've put on a committee to create an idea generation program, where you're formally soliciting ideas from employees. Why? Because your employees are closest to the work. So that's the inclusion. Now the belonging. Belonging is a pretty interesting perspective. It's, do my people feel that they have a future here? And how do you do that? How do you measure? Because in my consulting practice, what sets me apart is I measure all of the things that I do in terms of employee training and development, leadership team coaching, and culture transformation. We measure setting work outputs and measurable, quantifiable benchmarks before we begin so that we can measure progress made and ultimate success. So the belonging that we measure is quality of hire, the quality of your talent acquisition and retention and the management. So the belonging is, do our people feel like they can stay? Now, I know the proverbial angst of those of us, I'm a Gen Xer, so Gen Xers, boomers, matures. When we look at these young folk, these millennials and Gen Zs, and we say they're not committed to anything. They want to be promoted in 3 months. They want to have their voices heard, yeah. They want us to have values as an organization, no doubt. But that sense of their belonging is, can I see a path forward into the future here? They were raised differently. That's just the way it is. When we talk about diversity from a generational perspective. They expect things, and you can either howl at the moon, wishing that they weren't that way, or re-architect your culture and your workforce around it. So to accommodate a sense of belonging for all of our people means I need to feel like I fit in. I'm wanted. So let me give you an example. One of my last day jobs before I went back and got my MBA was I worked for a recruiting firm down in Washington, D.C. And I was literally one of only 2 males in a company with 3 physical locations, 3 branches that I worked through each of them and stayed at each of them because I was doing the recruiting for each of the 3 branch locations, but I was only one of 2 men. I was one of only 2 white people. And every company outing, retreat, get together, I was made to feel like an outsider. Why? Just because the mindset of that organization was that it was led a divisional leader who went to a sorority in the South, and 3 of her branch location mates, her branch managers, were her sisters in her sorority. So it was a de facto company sorority, and you either fit in or you didn't. So that was a sense of belonging as a male, a white male. I felt like I didn't have a place. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the totality as we think it is a sense of creating a workforce that values everybody, that treats everybody with respect and civility and trust, and empowers your people and gives them the freedom, we call it autonomy, and this is the Daniel Pink idea, autonomy on 4 levels. We allow our people to pick and choose where they work from, when they work, what they work on, and who they work with. Wow, treating people, employees like adults. Why don't most businesses, in my observation, 17 years consulting over 500 organizations, why don't most organizations think and act this way in terms of how they treat their employees? Because they don't trust them. Because they don't hire the best. They hire on positions that are vacant, not behaviors, characteristics, qualities, background. So my first job when I do a workforce audit is I go in and I assess the lay of the landscape from a culture perspective, from a treatment of employees standpoint, and from a workforce empowerment perspective, all with a very keen eye on maximizing your people's performance and productivity and thus your profitability. So that's a key consideration. Having said that, I want to share with you my YouTube channel. And if you bear with me a second, as I get to that website, on my YouTube channel, I've already addressed this topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So take a moment later on and go to the Chazen Group LLC. And then you click on playlists, one of the options. And then you go to the playlist, which is organizations who get culture right and wrong, and view the full playlist. And you'll see that over the past 12, 18 months, I've looked at a lot of organizations: Morningstar in California, Zynga, Chubb Insurance, Elon Musk's SpaceX, Stellantis laying off 400 people on a conference call, Goya's CEO, Dun & Bradstreet, who I worked for earlier in my career, the former organization of 4 former US presidents. I talk about plans on diversity, equity, inclusion. I focus on great places to work, like W.L. Gore. I talk about what happened at Zoom after COVID. Nucor Steel, talk about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania's resurrection from a steel to 21st century city of the future, driven partially by Nucor Steel being a world-class organization. I talked about Yvonne Chouinard at Patagonia, how the new or relatively new CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, is transforming their culture. Costco, pushing back against their shareholders who wanted to remove DE&I hiring at one of their shareholder meetings. We talk about Meta and what they were doing to do away with diversity, equity, inclusion. Lockheed, Boeing, Harley Davidson. These are companies who are all dealing with pressure from right-wing think tanks, organizations like Heritage Foundation, the Koch brothers, Robbie Starbuck, a right-wing blog influencer. There's so much pressure in American politics going after DE&I as a woke, diversity focus on ethnic diversity, that it's not about going after white male rights. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is creating a workforce for the 21st century in a global, interconnected, constantly evolving, technology transformation at warp speed. It is the only way for organizations to successfully navigate the chaos and uncertainty of today's business climate. Why do I say that? You cannot succeed as a business, as a startup or a multinational corporation or anywhere on the organizational life cycle. You cannot succeed going after diversity, equity, inclusion, being blind to it, and/or refusing its existence and refusing to incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging into your culture. Why? 2 reasons. Gen Zs, millennials. They are the 2 largest and continuously fastest growing segments of the American workforce of 330 million people. What does that mean? When you put the bullet in your chamber and play Russian roulette and pull the trigger against your skull as an organization refusing to honor and adapt to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, you are alienating those 2 largest segments of the American workforce on 2 fronts. One, in terms of making it harder to recruit those amazing employees, because you have now a reputation of being an organization who has fought against diversity, equity, inclusion. But there's another side to this, that too many short-term, blind, myopic leaders in organizations that are doomed to failure, they're not considering. When you go against diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, you are potentially alienating those same Gen Z and millennials as consumers for your products and services. There's a reason why an amazing place to work like Honest Tea or Chobani or Kind or Patagonia or Zappos or Tom Shoes, you get the idea. Why those are fundamentally, they've built amazing workplace cultures that are fundamentally different than, let's say, British Petroleum or Bank of America or Wells Fargo, insurance, pharmaceutical, biotech, banks, hedge funds, private equity firms. They're different on the spectrum of workplace culture. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go into the description get my contact details, reach out to me. Let's talk about how do you develop, how can I assist you in rethinking your organization's approach to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, not as an altruistic, nice, touchy-feely, but rather as a quantifiable strategy where you can measure the positive impact moving forward upon implementation of these new age 21st century strategies of getting a more dedicated, professional, committed, loyal workforce who increase their performance and productivity, which will drive your profitability forward. Single greatest question I get, the problem that most of my clients face or potential clients is, you know, Ethan, I know that payroll is my largest expense. My people are my largest expense. I don't know how to measure the return on that. Well, two thoughts. Your people are not an expense to be managed. Your people are your only lasting competitive advantage. That's first and foremost. So if you think that your people are an expense, you've already somewhat failed in this sniff test of whether you have a viable future amazing place to work. The second consideration is because your people are your only lasting competitive advantage, you want to invest in them. And then that's the question of how do I invest in people? And then a component consideration of that is you seriously want me to think about re-architecting your talent acquisition, talent management, talent retention. Another problem that's voiced to me most frequently is, you know, these Gen Zs nowadays, they lack work ethic, loyalty, commitment, all the other BS. And I say BS because over the last 18 years, I've taught in 12 colleges and universities. I've taught over 5,000 Gen Zs and millennials. All those stereotypes are lazy. That's what a stereotype is. It's lazy. It's a way to clump them all together. But these people are amazing employees. What you want to do is to think or rethink rather and reapproach your strategy to recruiting them in an entirely new light. So as I said, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you could please subscribe to my YouTube channel, that really helps support my efforts to get these inspiring and insightful and motivational videos out there to you for you to implement in starting, growing, and transforming your organization. Thank you so much for your time. Have an amazing day. Take care.